Thank you. Can we now begin the historic Jeddah, the gate to Mecca from Saudi Arabia? Next slide, please. You can see the location on the edge of the Red Sea. Next slide, please. On the eastern shore of the Red Sea, Jeddah was a major port for the Indian Ocean trade routes, channeling goods to Mecca. The prosperity that this trade brought led to the development of a multicultural city between the 16th and the 20th century, which attracted merchants from the Maghreb, Arabia, and as far afield as India and Southeast Asia. Jeddah developed a distinctive architectural tradition, a fusion of Red Sea coastal coral building traditions with ideas and crafts from along the trade routes. The pinnacle of its prosperity was at the end of the 19th century, when the opening of the Suez Canal and the introduction of regular steamships extended the trade route north to Europe. Merchants who benefited built elaborate multi-story tower houses. In terms of category, this is a group of buildings, and in terms of the operational guidelines, it can also be seen as an inhabited historic town. What has been nominated is the central part of the historic city Al-Balad, around a third of the area that were within the former city walls, where evidence for its historic structures is densest. What has been excluded are areas to the west, where the old port has been destroyed, and its footprint included in an area of reclaimed land, and also areas to the east with modern high-rise neighborhoods. The old city has thus lost its crucial link with its harbor. Although the urban structure of the city dates back to the 16th century, very few buildings survive from that date, notably parts of 2 mosques. Most of the remaining structures reflect the prosperity of the 18th and particularly the end of the 19th centuries, although the architectural style reflects a much earlier period. Today, this central heart of the city is no longer the thriving metropolis it once was, and many of the houses are abandoned or subdivided to host tenants. Some of its buildings are fragile and vulnerable. When the first inventory of historic buildings was undertaken in the 1970s, 1,000 were identified in the whole of the old city. Since then, the pressure for development has taken its toll, and a survey in 2010 found only 350 remaining. However, there are 280 in the nominated area, and overall the proportion of historic to new buildings in that area appears to be around 50%. When Jeddah was thriving in the 19th century, a large influx of pilgrims had to be accommodated in the city. Wikalas, mainly in the Yemen quarter, could accommodate as many as 10,000 pilgrims. And although these are mentioned as part of the justification for OUV, few details are provided as to their details and survival. Pilgrims also lodged in ribats, hospices for merchants, and 3 are in the nominated area. One you can see here. A program of restoration is being launched. Due to recent developments, the 2 main souks or markets are both within the buffer zone. 2 are within the nominated area, the Souk al-Alawi and the Souk al-Badawi, with mostly traditional linear rows of single-story structures. Jeddah had mosques in all its main neighborhoods. The Great Mosque, roughly in the center of the city, was demolished in the 1990s. However, 9 historic mosques remain. The 2 most important architecturally are the Masjid al-Shafel and the Masjid al-Mimar. The one on the left here, the Masjid al-Shafel, was originally constructed in the 13th century, and its minaret remains, the rest being reconstructed in the 16th. This is currently undergoing a major restoration scheme. The text in the dossier also mentions zawiyas, religious schools, but again, few details have been provided of the buildings that house them. Jeddah developed a very distinctive architectural tradition, with ideas and crafts from along the trade routes being reflected in the details, especially in these multi-story tower houses. These had oriel windows with pierced and fretted wooden screens that provided privacy, and the exterior surfaces were protected by a lime plaster, often decorated sgraffiato work, particularly at street level. In Jeddah, some of the finest examples of this type of decoration were found, as well as, next slide please, the wind towers on the roofs which expelled the air through the houses. From the nomination dossier, it is unclear how many tower houses have survived. 6 are described in detail, nor are details provided of the 3 to 4 story houses that characterize the central part of the city and the even lower ones in the southern part. Historic Jeddah has 3 strands: the trading axis, the pilgrimage axis, and the tower houses. All of these need to be much more clearly articulated if there is to be a fuller understanding of the way the city developed and its potential outstanding universal value. The State Party readily acknowledges the 20th century decline of the city. The nominated area is of extremely fragile environment, weakened by 60 years of absence of maintenance and the pressure of rapid urban growth. As you've heard, large number of buildings in the city were demolished, and a high percentage of those remaining are in unstable condition and vulnerable to collapse or fires. The justification for OUV put forward in the nomination dossier is for Jeddah to be seen as a unique development of Red Sea architectural traditions, the last surviving cosmopolitan urban center of this cultural region to preserve its fabric, and the gate to Mecca for Muslim pilgrims. ICOMOS considers all of this could be appropriate, but it has not been substantiated by adequate precise details of the town planning and buildings to show that sufficient attributes of outstanding universal value survive. There is an urgent need to identify precisely what remains as a basis for future conservation as well that could ensure adequate integrity. If what remains is to be seen as a microcosm of the once thriving multicultural port city that reflects all its facets, then the attributes of OUV need to be clearly and specifically documented, presented, and readily understood. New slide. The lack of conservation is a great challenge. Stabilizing and conserving the 280 historic buildings and updating them is a project of enormous proportions. If the character and authenticity of these buildings is to be sustained, then conservation should be done slowly based on adequate evidence and using craftspeople trained in traditional skills. Overall, there's a high awareness of these needs, and conservation is now beginning. The new draft antiquity law was still under review at the time of our report, but we understand that this has now been approved. Overall, the management structure is still in its infancy and has yet to be proved in terms of its effectiveness in driving forward conservation and regeneration programs. Nevertheless, there's a strong national support to make this work, and considerable resources have been committed. ICOMOS considers that the current nominated property could be seen to be in danger in terms of its vulnerability to erosion of historic fabric. The conservation challenges it faces are extreme. We consider that a desired state of conservation for the property could be provided that sets out what condition could be achieved once the current decline in many buildings has been reversed, and the detailed measures necessary to achieve this with a roadmap to link the two. In view of all these considerations, ICOMOS recommends that the examination of this property be deferred to allow the State Party, with the advice of ICOMOS and the World Heritage Centre if requested, to provide the necessary detailed database of attributes relating to potential outstanding universal value, to strengthen the comparative analysis and to complete and approve the revised management plan. We've also made a few other suggestions, including the name of the property, and suggest it should be changed to the historic Jeddah A Gate to Mecca. We remain at the disposal of the State Party in the framework of upstream processes to advise further if requested. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, ICOMOS.